Yardi Matrix just released their March 2026 self-storage report, the graphic, which I'm going to go through in a moment, but this is not a typo, what I'm about to share with you. Welcome to the self-storage report. I'm Chris Berg. Thanks so much for joining us here. Just so you can see this a little bit better, but every single market, every single market here on this graphic had negative year-over-year rental growth in these different markets. I don't know if I've ever seen this before from Yardi, but every single one negative year-over-year rental growth. This is important because in the bottom here, and hopefully you can see this okay, but on the bottom, you've got Tampa. I'm going to focus on some Florida markets for you for a reason. You've got Tampa, Sarasota, even San Francisco and San Diego down here, negative rent over year-over-year. But Orlando also is here on the bottom. Now, why do I focus on Florida? Today, Storage Cafe, they just released basically a self-storage supply, because we talk so often here on the show. We like to keep it simple here on this self-storage report. How's that for alliteration? But supply and demand. And so they released this report, the number one state in the nation with the most oncoming supply in 2026, right down here in Florida, which, as you saw, Tampa is just getting crushed when it comes to year-over-year rental rates. Texas, number 2, California, number 3. Now, what does this mean for Florida? You got to keep in mind, if you're under construction right now, that means you probably bought the land, I don't know, 12, 24 months ago. So you're like, hey, this thing works. It makes sense. Let's build. As I just mentioned before, supply and demand is really the name of the game. Look, you and I both know, if you're in this industry, this is a very neighborly industry. You can find great sites here in Florida that are still going to work. But again, it depends on what's the supply and what's the demand. And I bring this up because if you're someone that says, hey, Florida's been hot, you hear the news about Bezos and Google and Zuck moving down to Miami. There's just a lot of media around what's going on down in Florida. Sounds good, but for the average Joe renting a storage site, Florida may, and this is obviously speculation, but may have some challenges here as far as what's going to happen with rental rates over the next few years. Florida migration, this is from realtor.com, but Florida migration plunges 93% in 3 years. I mean, those are just staggering numbers. So again, if you boil it down to just basic supply and demand, and there's 93% less people coming into the state, that does not bode well, clearly, from a demand perspective. Again, I know these are neighborhood assets. You can find good spots, but just to give you some more data, last year, the Sunshine State only gained 22,517 new residents, way down in comparison from, they had 58,000 in 2024. So more than half not showing up in 2025. 2023, they had 183,000. 2022, 310,000. So this demand driver, I mean, down over tenfold since 2022. So again, 93% drop in migration into Florida. So you got to just start to ask yourself, hey, what is this going to mean, of course, long term for some of those Florida assets? You might be in some great neighborhoods, just something you want to pay attention to with all this supply coming online, which is why we often talk about here on the show. Do yourself a favor. If you are kicking tires and underwriting a site, whether it be development, whether it be an acquisition, definitely go check out storagedemandscore.com. Again, storagedemandscore.com. I'm going to bring this up for you here. You can go there, and it's so simple. You basically type in an address. You're going to put in what your projected net rentable square foot is of the project, or if you're going to do an acquisition, you can put a 0 in here. You hit this button, and then it's going to give you an actual demand score based on what I love about this site is it's formulaic. It's based on the formula inside the Self-Storage Association demand study. So it gives you, it's not the number, but it is a number as you begin to underwrite, to look at it as like, hey, is there an actual need? Is there a demand for this product that I want to bring into this market? I think that's one of the questions. Everyone talks about supply in this industry, which obviously it's very measurable, but very few people do a good job of really formulaically, is that even a word? Having a formula for the demand for your product in that particular market. So wanted to share with you what's going on. We'll have more on this very, very soon. We've got a podcast coming up next week with Noah Starr from Tract IQ. one thing to know next week as you see these numbers here with, again, negative year-over-year rental rates in March of 2026 in all the markets. I'll bring this back up because it's almost like you look at this and you go, come on, this has got to be a spoof, right? So that's what it is. But I want to remind you next, I think it's Tuesday is Public Storage earnings call. Wednesday will be Extra Space earnings call. And then we'll have Noah on the podcast next Thursday talking about that. You can watch it live on LinkedIn. So thank you. Share this with friends and colleagues. And welcome to the Self Storage Report. We'll see you back here soon.